Hey peeps, I'm back again. So it's been a few months since I last made any videos, and in the meantime there has been some progress and growth and even a couple of new additions. So I thought, well, now's a very good time to give you all an update and let you know what's happening. So I'm going to make a whole bunch of videos, but I think right now I'm going to start with the orchids because there's some interesting things happening. Well, I'm not really interested, I would say standard things happening that I haven't really covered on videos before with the orchids. So I thought, well, I have some good examples, so why not show you? Maybe you know, maybe you don't know, maybe you learn something new. Who knows? But it's all fun. So I will start with 3 orchids, well, 3 flowers. I've got raisins, I've got a new one, well, oh sorry, I've got 2 new ones. And they're all doing sort of different things that I can show you what you can do when you see them happening on your orchids. So I think we'll start with raisins, because raisins is actually, well, you can see he's not in his pot at the moment. He has dropped all his flowers after quite some months, and I'm surprised that I didn't shock it too much when I changed the medium over. If you want to see me do that, you can check that out in the other video in my orchids vlog. But no, his flowers finished dropping, I think, last week. So they held on for another, I think, 4 months after the repotting, so I'm very happy that I didn't traumatize him too much. So although he's finished flowering, he's not entirely finished flowering, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So one thing I've noticed that some people aren't really sure on is what to do with the spikes once the flowers drop. You know, do I cut them? Do I leave them? What do I do? So I'm gonna tell you a few things that you can do when an orchid drops its flowers. You can figure out, judging on the health of the plant or what you want to do, you can make a decision from there. So raisins. Okay, so here he is. You can see there are no more flowers, but the spikes remain, and you can see there's some colour difference and some texture and consistency difference. And I think in order to show you properly, I'm going to have to flip the camera around and change the angle, so I will give you a better view of the orchids while I explain and show you. So in a second. Okay, so here is raisins without his flowers, and I'm pretty sure you can see straight away what the issue is with the spikes and how they look very different from each other. So I'm going to explain anyway, because yeah, in the spirit of learning and everything. So when a spike drops its flowers, sometimes it will die back like this, and you can see here that it looks very wrinkly, very yellow, very dried out. There's absolutely no green to that whatsoever. And you can also see here, along this spike here, that it's beginning to lose its colour and yellow, and again it's eventually going to turn like this one here. It's just going to dry out, hollow out, and look ugly. So when it does this, you have really no other option to cut it. And yeah, you can see again here, it's all wrinkly and yellow and dead, and here it's very green and full of life, and yeah, this is still healthy. You can still do something when you see spikes like this, but it's up to the orchid ultimately what happens, but you can still do something. So this, see, it bends, it breaks, it's dead. See, just dead. So yeah, when you cut the spikes, you can do one of three things. You can cut it back to the next healthy node here, so which would be this one here. And you always want to make sure that you cut just a little bit above the last node. So when it dies back, and it will just die back and drop off, this part here will remain alive, hopefully, if the orchid so chooses. And it's isolated at each node point. So from each node, this section here is kind of like a sealed section. So when you cut something, it dies off there, and that's that. And this is on its own, it's completely unaffected because it kind of caps at the nodes. So you can either take it down to the next healthiest node, or you can take it down as far as the very first or the second if you want it lower. As the lower you cut it, the stronger the regrowth will be. The higher it is, it will be a slightly weaker regrowth, but it will still be regrowth. So you can choose how far you want to cut it, or if you want to just remove it completely, take it down to the last node, and that's that. And obviously, if the orchid has space like between the crown, the orchid will just produce an entirely new spike. But if you want to keep the old spikes on, two things can happen. It can either, as you can see here, like I said, he may have dropped his flowers, but he ain't done flowering yet. There is, if it would so kindly focus, there is a sprout here. No, it's really not wanting to focus, is it? Oh, damn it. Yeah, there we go. You can see a sprout, and it's coming out of one of the nodes. See? And you can still, oh, god damn it. I need to get a better camera. I'm sorry, guys. So it's coming out of this node here, and you can see this brown tissue is flaking off, and there's a new spike coming out there. So that's just going to branch off, and that's going to create new flowers. So that's one thing that can happen with an old spike. The second thing that can happen, which you've already seen in one of my previous videos about Sassy and Loopy, and that's a keiki can grow. And what a keiki is basically a baby orchid. It's just the way the orchid survives. It reproduces, and it makes a clone of itself. So either a new set of flowers will grow, or a new orchid will grow. So you can increase your chances using keiki paste, which is basically just this hormone which encourages and increases the chances that it will produce a keiki. But when you go on to that hormone level, it will either work, or it will seriously risk mutating your orchid in some way. Like, it will either grow weird leaves, or it might spike terminally, or God knows what it will do. But personally, I don't like taking the risks. I like leaving it go and letting it do its own thing. So yeah, that's basically what you can do with the spikes once your orchid is pruned out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just cut them off here, and then I can show you what it looks like after I'm finished cutting. So we'll be back in a minute. Okay, and that's the spikes cut. Now what I've chosen to do is just cut it down to the next node, so it can just die off. This one can continue to grow because it's growing anyway. This one I've taken down a couple of nodes, but I've decided to leave the spike because, yeah, when there's a spike already there, it takes less time between blooms, so I'd like to see it rebloom a little sooner than it would take to grow a new spike entirely. And this one again as well under here, I've just taken back. So maybe it regrows, maybe it grows a keiki, maybe it does both, who knows. So I will keep you updated on raisins and let you know how he grows. So moving on to... Okay, so this guy is a new addition and it's something a little special. You can see, oh, it's got long spikes. Look at that. Look at that gorgeous colouring. It's got a few flowers on it, but just look how stunning that was. I saw it in the supermarket. Yeah, it was a supermarket rescue, so it's a little shocked. You can see here there's again some dieback and there's been a little bit of bud blast, and I'll explain what all that means in a second once I finish up the shot here. So it's a supermarket orchid, and as you can see, it's going through some adjustments because obviously the conditions in my home is different from the conditions in the shop. So this generally happens with orchids when they go from one place to the other and there's a change in environment, and they get a little bit shocked and they can either drop some flowers, the buds can blast, the roots may have some trouble adjusting when you change the medium, but as long as you keep it happy and healthy, it should bounce back and recover. That's one of the great things about complex hybrid phalaenopsises. They are so tough, and if you do make a mistake, providing it's not super stupid and it goes on for a long time, you can generally rescue them, be it via a keiki or actually managing to revive the mother plant itself. So yeah, that's this orchid. It doesn't have a name. It has some good roots. I've already changed the medium, and it's in this new professional pine bark, and it's a little bit smaller than the other stuff that you've seen me use on this channel. So it's a lot finer. It's a lot nicer. It doesn't hold the water so well, so I've really got to watch that this doesn't dry out so well, because I really, if I don't water it once a week, or sometimes if it's a small orchid, yeah, it can get a little bit thirstier than it needs to be. So yeah, I'm hoping these will just run their course and it will just throw out new roots. I'm really hoping this one bounces back because he's really gorgeous. So here though, you can see this shriveled little thing here. Now that was a bud that never, oh, it fell off. That is a bud that never was. This is bud blast. And what happens is, depending on the colour of the orchid, I think I have another one. So depending on the colour of the orchid, depends on how it looks, but it's basically the same. The only difference is the colour. It shrivels up, it dries up, you can hear it just, yeah, and it just dies without opening, and that's that. And it's such a shame, because when you have a spike and you're expecting a beautiful display, and then suddenly all the flowers start dropping. So yeah, that's a common problem when you bring a new orchid home, or if there is an extreme difference in temperature or a sudden difference in weather conditions. It can just happen. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can really do against it. It just happens. So yeah, and unfortunately this one had more flowers, but they dropped, so it's only got like 6 left, and the rest of the buds just blew, and this is what I've got left. But I have noticed, I don't know if you are going to be able to see it or not, but you can definitely see it from my perspective. There is something growing from this node here. And I think it's a secondary spike, so I'm pretty happy about that I'm going to see more beautiful flowers from this guy a lot sooner than I thought I would when I started seeing the distress. So I'm going to, obviously, once it's done flowering, I'm going to remove this dead bit. And another thing that I forgot to mention about what you could do with spikes is sometimes, you see this one here, this can continue to grow and extend the spike and it will get even longer, and that can also put out a few more blooms, or it will just continue to grow to an insane length. Again, it depends how long you want it, if you want to let it grow wild, or if you'd rather cut it back and wait to see what regrows. Yeah, that's also another option. So yeah, that's what you do with spikes, and unfortunately you can't avoid bud blast. And you can see here this one originally had 7, but that's where the buds blew, and that happened because we had a big frost. There was a huge drop in temperature, and even room temperature, there was just so much of a difference, and unfortunately he just, yeah, they blew and they came off, and there's only 3 left, so I'm quite sad about that, but yeah, what are you gonna do? So that is bud blast covered, and what you can do with the spikes. Now, the last topic that I wanted to cover was what to do when the bottom leaves of your fowl start yellowing. So sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time, after a while the bottom leaves of the fowl will turn this crinkly yellow colour and they will just come off. Now at first it will start like at the tip of the leaves, and it will work down, and it will suddenly just turn like this and it will come off, as you see, and you can see here where it was, the dry flesh. So this is normal. This is how orchids shed their leaves, but if it starts doing it like all over the orchid, then obviously there's a bigger problem that you need to investigate. But yeah, that's basically how you deal with yellowing leaves that are coming off the bottom. You wait until they get like this, and when you move them, they come off with no effort at all. This is normal. Do not worry about it. So yeah, this orchid you may not recognise. It's another new one. It's a rescue from the IKEA. So a friend of mine works there, and sometimes they throw out the plants that have been knocked over or slightly damaged, or for whatever reason they aren't in a good enough condition to be sold, so they're thrown out. So this is a fowl. It's just a standard white one. There's nothing fancy about it, but you know, it's still pretty. So I've had this for a couple of months, and it's in the new medium, and you can see here it's adapting. There's the little fertilizer stick that I tried out in there, you can see there, and you just stick it in there, and when you water it, it dissolves and releases some nutrients. So this one, there's not really much happening, and you can see, oh, he's very loose. His roots was very damaged, but yeah, he's recovering nicely, and yeah, I'll update you once this one recovers a bit, but there's really not much to tell on this one, and it could be quite a while. So yes, that is how you deal with spikes and old leaves. I'm going to wrap this video up because it's been going on for quite some time now, and I do want to move on with making some other videos. So thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video, and as always, keep it chill. Bye guys.